So welcome back to the Drum Electric. I don't know why I put the in front of drum, it's just Drum Electric. Welcome back to Drum Electric. The Yamaha EAD10 is an amazing piece of equipment. If you've never used it before, it's essentially this little box that sits on your bass drum, connected to a little module, and then it makes incredible drum sounds. It gives you studio quality, well, it gives you near studio quality recordings of a drum kit from a little box on the thing. I need to stop selling it. It's great. Either way, but you'll notice throughout this video I never actually hold one. You'll never see one on the kit behind there, and that, my friends, is because I actually sold it about a year ago. I know, the audacity, but that's for another video. We'll get into that another day. But today is how well it works to isolate the drums in a live or a loud environment. So you're looking to get the EAD10 for in-ears to use for live recordings, and you want to know how well it works in that scenario. Well, that's what we're going to talk about, and that's what I'm here for. So let's get into it. Let's find out how well the EAD10 performs in a live scenario to isolate them tubs. So before I sold the EAD10, I did use it mainly for my in-ears, which, don't worry, there is plenty of footage of. I've thrown a GoPro in many a place on a live gig. But not only this, the main use was either to clean up recordings of live shows to isolate the drums from the band, or here in the studio, or actually the old studio, which was just a room at the bottom of a house, to get really quick, nice, clean audio. Check this one out. So that recording was taken in a room at the bottom of my house, where it wasn't particularly acoustically treated, it wasn't done up very nice by any means, but it did a really good job. It made the drum sound really, really nice. I think for the preset I was just using one of the standard ones with a little bit of reverb, but I didn't need much because I'm not the biggest fan of the reverb on there, but it still sounded great. And bearing in mind this was one of the earlier versions of the EAD10 which has now been updated over the years. So we know how well it works in a studio environment. So how well does it work in a live environment where we've got the guitarist's amp right next to us, we've got the bass player rumbling our bass drum, stuff like that. Here's a little bit of footage to check that out. So obviously, to be expected, the more outside sound we have, the more bleed we're going to get. Now, bearing in mind this is only a very minimal amount of bleed, all of the audio you're hearing is straight from the EAD10. That means that the drums are still in the forefront of the mix and you get that little outside noise. Either way, it's so much better than the GoPro audio, so yeah. But it works well. It does a great job of isolating it, which means that if you want to send it out to front of house, you can, or even more so, and what we're looking at is if you want to send it to your in-ears, it works really, really well. So what you're also hearing in these videos is the mix that I'm sending to my in-ears. So all of that mix, all of that goodness that's going to my ears, it is mixed with some outside noises. So the guitarist is sending through a DI, so is the bass player and vocalist through the vocal mic, stuff like that, your usual average mix. But all this is doing is going into a mixer, so I have my EAD10 mix, and then I just have a mix from the front of house, mono or stereo depending on the gig, but usually mono, that just gives me everything else, and I tell them that I don't want any drums in my mix. Now, the main problem that I had with the EAD10 was that it didn't pick up cymbals very well. As overheads go, the EAD10 is not that good for it. It's great in a studio setting, and as you've probably seen from many Instagrams, stuff like that, it does work well, but with the balance from kick, snare to overhead in an in-ear mix, you'll probably want the overheads to come through more, so you've got a gauge of not only the rest of the kit, but how loud you're being in reference to the rest of the room. So on that front, if you're looking for more overheads rather than kick and snare, which is what I was looking for, the EAD10 might not be the best choice. Not only this, but you can lose a little bit of those ghost notes on your snare drum, especially if you're adding ghosts on the hi-hat, for example. So there's little skip notes, those odd 16s that you like to put in there. I know what you like. So you're adding those little ghost notes, those 16s, those additions to your hi-hats and snare drum, but you do lose it in the mix just a little too much for my personal liking. Obviously, it'll never beat having a full mic setup, but in terms of a kick, snare, and overhead setup, which is what the EAD10 is trying to replicate, it's not quite there for me because I like to crank those overheads. Now, in saying that, the EAD10 is still amazing, and if you're looking for a really good way of having an in-ear mix that you can rely on every single gig, this is a great place to start. If you're working with in-ears but you don't have the full mic setup, or you just can't get the sound right with the sound engineer, which is quite a common thing, then this is a great place to start. The EAD10 was fantastic when I used it, and I do love it as a piece of equipment. Yamaha have really made some magic with that little box right there, and it's fantastic for if you want to create really quick recordings, or if right now in 2020, recording good drum stuff is very difficult and a very new thing to all of us. So if you can't quite invest in all of the gear to fully mic up a kit, the EAD10 is certainly a great piece of equipment to look into. But like I said, in my own experience, I prefer cranking the overheads, which is why the EAD10 didn't work for me. But in terms of isolating the drums from the band in a live setting, they work fantastically. So if you do want to use those for in-ears, then I do recommend it. As with anything though, always go into your local music shop, local drum shop, local tub supplier, and ask if they've got one in, can they get one in, and can you hit some tubs and try it out? Because that's what I did. You always got to try stuff before you buy it, because it's going to be completely different to what you might imagine it to be. And that is that. That is it. That is all we have. That's how well the EAD10 works in a live scenario for your in-ears, in a studio setting, to isolate drums, all of the above. How well does it work to isolate the drums? So it does work well with an in-ear mix, like I mentioned. Just if you're looking for that extra overheadness, if you need more than just kick and snare, then this might not be the option for you. But in saying that, if you want to protect your ears, you want to get an in-ear mix that's consistent the whole time, then this is for you. It's a great place to start. And either way, it's a great tool for a studio environment. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, or even requests, please lob them in the comment section down below. I'd love to help out wherever I can. Hit that like button and subscribe for all of the shiny new videos, and I'll see you in the next one.